Into the toilet I go.
Guys, first of all, I know I'm about 22 years late to the game, but hear me out.
Alrighty then.
Continuing the Andy Kaufman theme this channel recently has undergone, I thought I'd make one last video circling the guy, where I finally can undress my unpopular opinion of this movie. You know, from scrolling through reviews, it's apparent people are very split on this film. A lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it, and I'm very in between, to be honest. Yo, what's up, guys? Just chilling in between these two opinions right here, you know. Keeping it neutral, not really taking a stance on anything right now, just kind of seeing how things go, you know. It feels kind of good to just like relax and not having to like punch my point across or like, you know, completely rage at someone for like thinking something that I don't think about something. And you know, yeah, I'm just enjoying the neutral style right now. So what was it that one guy said about the film being like a stunning film or something? Like, bro, I think that's a little too much. Just to be, I'm not taking a stance or anything, but I think that it might be a little too much compared to like what I think. Yeah. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's kind of ugh. Now, before you say something like, you just don't like this movie because you don't appreciate Jim Carrey's humor. Yes. I also had to mention, though, that I initially saw this movie because of Jim Carrey, when I didn't know who Andy Kaufman even was, and my opinion has not changed through the years. And I've seen this movie now 3 times. And trust me, I really wanted to like this movie. It's just lacking in several ways, and I just can't seem to pretend to actually like it. You know, I just don't. And I don't dislike Jim Carrey per se. It's more that I just think he comes across as a disingenuous, annoying person, and I have trouble seeing how people wouldn't agree with that. I mean, it's kind of his shtick to act like an annoying buffoon, which I just don't find charming in the slightest.
Nice.
Come to think of it, Jim Carrey is actually kind of similar to Adam Sandler in that way. His cheap little moron act, which makes him millions, is very... what's the word?
You sure you're not stressed out about maybe sex or something? Have you been going down on her?
Bad?
Anyway, how is your sex life?
But the guy can really pull off a great performance when he tries. And so can Jim Carrey. From The Truman Show to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Jim Carrey has shown range. I even think he's pretty good in Man on the Moon. Jim Carrey does a pretty excellent impersonation of several of Andy Kaufman performances, but I never saw him play Andy Kaufman the guy. Part of the problem is, of course, that the film doesn't really allow much for it. I mean, the movie is mostly performance after performance where they have spent a bunch of money recreating some of Andy's best performances, but they're never as good as the real deal, and they're also not progressing the story much other than moving it closer and closer to his death. And it's not very funny. You know, a lot of these Andy Kaufman performances that we see bits of in the film was intended to be experienced in its entirety, but because we just see small bits from it, you know, small highlights, it doesn't really have the same punch, and it sort of loses its entertainment value, and instead you're supposed to gain some sort of understanding of the guy But I don't really know what this film wants us to believe about the guy other than, oh, he's a genius. That's fine, but you know, what's really going on in there? We don't really see that much of it. Granted, Andy Kaufman is a difficult person to make a good film about. I mean, he is an enigma and he is a difficult person to explain, but it just didn't feel like they were digging much, to be honest. It's just a bunch of small pieces taken from here and there, put together, and that's it. Now, after reading Andy Kaufman The Truth finally, I suddenly understood what the problem was. And it was not just because Jim Carrey decided to act like a pretentious asshole and make the whole experience really difficult for everyone.
How far would Andy take it?
Jim, what do you mean? How far would Andy go if he played himself in his own biopic? Or how far would Andy go if he played you somehow, even though he died when you were like 23 years old? You're not really doing a great job of justifying your dickish behavior here, Jim. You said you became Andy Kaufman while you were looking at the ocean horizon or some. But it seems obvious you're just doing this for your own egoic pursuit. I mean, you're able to impersonate his performances very well at best, but at no point did I see a person other than Jim Carrey in this film. And by the way, the only reason Jim Carrey got the role was because he tricked his peers. Yes, that's right. When the director Milos Forman sent out the casting call, he got so many responses from different A-list actors, it made him crawl up into a little ball of anxiety. You see, Tom Hanks, Nicolas Cage, Edward Norton, and so many others were interested in the part. And because Milos didn't want to ruin his potential future relationship with all of these powerful heads in the industry, he said that everyone interested in the part had to make an audition tape. So what do you think Jim does? He called the other actors and said that someone in their position shouldn't have to make an audition tape, and voila, Jim is the only one with a tape. This is actually a pretty baller move though, to be honest, by Jim. I mean, I do applaud him for that, but at the same time, I don't applaud him for what followed. But the film's main issue obviously lies with the screenplay and the directing. But first, the screenplay. It could not be more by the numbers than it is, to be honest. First of all, a little backstory. So, Milos Forman was coming off the People vs. Larry Flynt, which was a success critically as far as I know. I have not seen it, but Milos was very happy with his screenwriters, Scott Alexander and Larry Karavisky, and was proud to bring them with him onto this project. The writing duo had some steam in their back, or whatever that saying is, after recently having written both The People vs. Larry Flynt and Ed Wood, which were critical successes and Oscar contenders. They also wrote this, which cat film. Anyways, the duo was happy to be on board and started researching right away, and they interviewed everyone. Andy's peers, friends, family, Danny DeVito. That's right, by the way, Danny DeVito was actually the guy producing the film and actually made it happen in the first place. Kudos to Danny. Anyways, Scott and Larry decided to focus on Bob Zmuda, Andy Kaufman's best friend's story, but they kind of lacked a direction other than knowing it would end with Andy's death. And just a few weeks prior to the actual shoot of the film, Milos felt that their screenplay were completely uninspiring and went off to write his own version over the weekend. He came back and had a fight with Danny DeVito, which insisted they couldn't change the story so close to the shooting. Apparently, Milos' new screenplay was about how Andy was running from his early death with his extreme behaviors, knowing it would inevitably come. Nothing more was really ever said about it, and the chaotic shoot began.
Have you played a real person before?
That's an odd question. Like a living person?
Yeah.
I don't think I had before that, no.
With Jim all coked up on his ego, Milos uninspired and exhausted from Jim and from never getting more than 4 hours of sleep at night.
Okay!
Just for a slide.
Okay!
Okay, fine.
Right.
As a director, Jim Carrey's nowhere in sight. You're dealing with Tony Clifton.
Yeah.
Is that frustrating?
It is.
While DeVito was running around as the producer protecting Milos from Jim and Jim from Milos.
Somebody! Somebody help! God damn it! God damn it, not again!
It sounds like quite the circus, to be honest. You could almost say it's a miracle that the film didn't turn out worse than it did, but the result just sort of ended up feeling like a bit of a missed opportunity. Andy Kaufman was such an interesting guy who went in a completely different direction than anyone else, yet this movie offers nothing extra and just ends up being an okay, I guess, out of 10. Or I guess I should correct myself, the film did offer something extra if you count Jim and Andy, which I do think is a better film than Man on the Moon. Not really comparable though, but if the alternative to Jim and Andy's existence was a better version of Man on the Moon, I would have chosen that without question.
Thank you very much.
In the end, I guess I am glad they did make a film about Andy. It was a big risk and they did try, so kudos. I guess the lesson here, if there is any, is just about how a film with so much potential can end up so forgettable due to the complications within the infrastructure of communication behind the scenes. In ways, this movie was pushed into production sooner than it should have been, which is what often happens in favor of the business aspects of film productions, which inevitably fuels the art to be brought to life. And so that's understandable, but not really respectable. Man on the Moon is just fine, which kind of sucks to say. It would be more pleasurable to hate on it, but I just can't.
Oh, perfect timing. I'd hoped they'd hatch before I had to go to the boat.
Henry, why didn't you tell me? I insist on being here when they're born. Come on. Very good. Push. Very good. Push. Present for the birth of every little creature on this island.
Well, there it is.